And it. Yes, and I'm frozen. Hello. Yes. Good evening. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Cristiano Van Zeller. Good afternoon, the Douro boys and Douro girls. I believe. And good afternoon, Poland. And we start in grand finale from Quinta do Crashtu. Quinta do Crashtu in Douro Valley, and 18 locations in Poland. Yeah, let's start. Cristiano Van Zeller, could you take the voice and have the first presentation? The voice.
Okay, very good. Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome to our small presentation and tasting. And so I'll start with the Douro as a whole. And but before that, presenting the group, we are a group of five producers in the Douro. You've got the names on the screen, and we've been working together officially as a group to promote our wines since 2002. But in reality, we've been doing this for many generations in different families. Each of the different companies will present itself in due time. And I will just go through a very small presentation about the Douro itself. Now, Piotr, how does it work? Ah, good. Thank you very much. Here is we start with where we are in the map in Portugal. So this is Portugal, and the Douro and Port region are where it is located there, indicated on the map in the northeastern part of Portugal. The Douro, the history of the region is a very old, and um, the first registrations about wine and vines in Portugal and in the Iberian Peninsula date from um, ancient times, brought in by the Phoenicians before 700, 800 before Christ. In the region, we can find traces of vines and production of wine since Roman times. But in reality, the great development of the region and the wine in the region started already, and also with uh, foundation of Portugal in the beginning of the 12th century. And as you can see, there is the map of the region. We start 80 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean in a valley, and we go through to the Spanish border. The Douro River starts in Spain, but the majority of it runs in Spain, and it goes through Portugal in about just over 200 kilometers. In the region, we have about 100 kilometers of those 200. And so in this area, the history starts with the development of the population after the reconquest from the Islamic invaders, and in the 12th century. And the development of the vineyard, you can go through to the next. Thank you very much. And the next one. Good. The great development of the vines also happened mainly in the 17th and 18th century. In the 17th century, because of the wars between England and France, there was the English needed to find a replacement of French wines. And so they came to Portugal, their oldest ally, to look for those wines. And they went into the Douro, where they could find rich wines with very fruity and with great structure, but also with capacity to age. And that capacity to age in this region, which had mostly trees and had very little agriculture because it's very mountainous, but the great capacity was enhanced by some enological procedures. You can go to the next one, please. Great. And the next one. Good. And the development of the sales of the wines and the sales of wines was so important that by the beginning, the middle of the 18th century, our king and our prime minister found it necessary to control and regulate how the wine was produced and sold, and how it even the prices. And that created, in reality, the first modern demarcated region in the world. And that happened in 1756. Although the first time a wine from the Douro was called port happened in 1675, in documents in 1675. So it is in 1756 mainly that there is a true change and a regulation, and that regulation made the change to create an industry and the development of a region which became the most important export for Portugal for many decades and even a couple of centuries. You can go to the next one, please. Right, and the next one. The demarcation happened in ways that transformed the region and divided the region in basically two areas. One that had granite, which was the outskirts of the Douro region, and the other one that had a very consistent and homogeneous soil of schist soil. And this schist soil, because of the climate and because of the mountainous area that we have with the valley and the Douro River cutting it through in the middle, creates some very special climate. We can go to the next one. Okay, we'll go for the next one. Okay, thanks. And this, the very special climate also, and the very special geological situation and morphological situation in the Douro creates very different types of planting. In the Douro, we have 4 different types of planting nowadays. The original type that you can see on the slide was the one that was used right until the end of the 19th century, was mostly used until the end of the 19th century. And when phylloxera came in 1863 and destroyed most of the vineyards in Europe, there was a big transformation also in the ways it was planted. And we can find what we see there on the slide, the post-phylloxeral type, which lasted basically until the end of the 1970s. In the 1980s, with the need of mechanization, we moved to what we call the patamars. So we went a little way back to the original type, but without the walls. And a bit further later in years, we went to what we call Vinho Alto, or the vineyards planted along the slope, along the lines of the slope, like you can see in Germany, for instance, where you can mechanize. But the problem of these vineyards in very steep slopes is the erosion of the soils, and we don't have a lot of soil and arable soil in our mountains. So in reality, those vertical plantings can only happen when the hills are not very steep, up to 30% maximum. So even now, we are going back to what we see there as the post-phylloxeral type. And that's trying to combine what we call the Vinho Alto and the post-phylloxeral type in ways that we can plant in very different slopes and terroirs. Can move that? Please move it, yeah. So here's a photograph of the post-phylloxeral type. You can move that to another one, please. Here are some walls, which are a mixture of post-phylloxeral type with still some traditional. You can't see that in the picture, in fact, but that vineyard has some of the very traditional and original ones right at the top end of it. You can see those walls in there. And the Petamash terraces, you can find these are planted after 1980s. They can have 1 or 2 rows of vines depending on the slopes. But nowadays, 1 row of vines is the style that we plant in the Douro. Move on. This is a photograph where you have a vineyard. In fact, this photograph is a vineyard that I planted in 1987. It's a vertical planting all the way. There was 12 hectares of vertical plantings, the biggest vertical plantings until that time, planted in the Douro in the 1980s. Can move on. Now the soil is very different. There's a little bit of granite. You can find granite in the soils in areas inside the Douro region, but basically the region was defined and demarcated where the granite stopped and the schist started. So the great majority, the overwhelming majority of the region is in schist with little places of granite. And in the case of Quinta Valmiel, and Luisa will explain that, it mixes granite, schist, and alluvial soil and makes it a very special property because of that. And it's a unique place in that sense in the whole of the Douro. Can move that. Climate. Now, we have a climate that is not one, it's a mixture of climates. We've divided the region in three. It's not an official division, but it really works and it's been a traditional one. In the one where it says red, we're closer to the Atlantic Ocean, it starts at about 80 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. We have more Atlantic Mediterranean climate. In the center region, the Cima Corgo, we have Mediterranean continental climate as we approach the Spanish border east. And in the Douro Superior, which is the biggest region, but with less area surface planted of vineyards, we have a very much more continental climate. And you can see the differences of rainfall, 900 millimeters in the Baixo Corgo, 600 in the middle, and just over 400 in the Douro Superior. So it really differs in terms of rainfall, and that's only about 100 and something kilometers long. So it's very mixed, very diverse, not only because of the climate, but because of the soil, the altitudes, and everything. Can move to the next one. We just referring the climate, we have cold winters, and cold is not Poland cold, Polish cold, but we do have -4, -5 some days of the year in winter. But we do have a very hot summer, and having temperatures of 45, 48 degrees Celsius is not uncommon, and it's really very common. We just hope it doesn't stay for very long when it's that hot, but over 30s during the day, or even a little bit over 40s, and hardly declining in some of the hottest nights to under 30. It's very common during summer. And but at the same time, because of the soil climate and all the characteristics of the region, we have an enormous biodiversity, and that enormous biodiversity makes the region possible, or makes it possible in the region to have an enormous diversity of indigenous grape varieties. Portugal has more than 250 indigenous grape varieties. There are 60 to 64 red and 48 white different grape varieties in the Douro. And they are planted from 120 meters altitude to a little bit over 700 meters of altitude. So it's an enormous diversity of grape varieties and what they produce and how they produce because of the diverse altitudes and sun exposures and so on. Can you move to the... So we've got 64 authorized red varieties, and some of the names will come next. Some of the better known, Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca. Touriga Nacional represents about 5% of the plantings in the region. Touriga Franca about 20, 25. The next one's Roriz, which is Tempranillo in Spain, represents another 15, 20%. Barroca about 10. So these represent nowadays an important majority of the plantings in the Douro, but we have so many different ones. Tinta Barroca is another one, Tinto Cão, Souzão, There could be enormous names, a list of names for the reds. For the whites, we have also a very important list. Malvasia fina, which is very good together with a couple of others for ports. So are all the others, but for wines, we use more Gouveia for dry wines. We use some of the next ones, please. Yeah, Rebigato, Erinto, and we don't have any of the weird names in here. Vizinho, these are weird enough, but we have weirdest names. There's one which is Jganakan, which translates to dog strangler. It doesn't help very much to sell a dog strangler wine with a name on the label. I can imagine a nice label for that anyway. But with these different grape varieties, we produce a diversity of wines, be it single varietals, which are more common now, but they're still not the majority of the wines you see from the Douro. And most of our wines are planted, come from vineyards that are planted mixed, in the case of some of us producers, or planted by grape variety and mixed to make a blend. So we have a mixture of field blend wines or blended wines from different grape varieties altogether. Single grape varieties, they exist. You're going to see a couple, but they're not. They don't make the majority of the Douro wines, and certainly not no majority at all of ports. Ports, in terms of ports are all blends of different grape varieties. In fact, I only see I've only seen in my life as single varietal ports, but only as experiments and never sold as such, which is a very interesting stuff. In terms of winemaking, we still use in many aspects, especially for some of the best wines, and certainly for the best ports, the foot treading, crushing the grapes by foot. It's not because of tradition, but it's because it still makes the best wines, and it's an important method to produce intense and good quality wines and ports, of course. And when I'm talking about wines, I'm referring for both Douro and ports. And of course, we have nowadays stainless steel vats for fermentation too, and for storage. Although the stainless steel vats are used mainly for very short-term storage of both wines and ports. Now, there is one question there. Do you notice much climate changes in various regions? The thing we notice more in the region has to do with how the rainfall is distributed along the year, and the amount of years that are more dry than anything on the drier side. And the other thing that we're beginning to notice is the slight increase in the average temperature, especially in summer. Although our grape varieties and our terroir is so used for these very high temperatures that so far it hasn't affected that much. I think that one of the things that affects most, or can affect most, is the potential lack of rain in some parts of the year. But that's long term, and we are a lot of the farmers and the institutes, the investigation institutes, are working with different grape varieties and learning more and more about more resistant grape varieties, which one are more resistant, planting them in higher altitudes to prevent, to get fresher temperatures, etc., etc., etc. You can move to the next one, please. Now, here are along the Douro. Here are the approximate location of the main properties and the main vineyards of our 5 members of the Douro Boys. As you can see, we go from the beginning of the region nearly to the Spanish border, and Crasto and Quinta do Valado have properties very close to the Spanish border, for instance. So there's a mixture of different locations for everything that we do in our properties and from our companies. And And before we go anywhere else, do we have any special questions about the history? And I will cut it from here and pass. Piotr, I will pass the word to you, and then maybe to the introduction of each of the companies or tasting the first wine.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cristiano. Thank you. It was very interesting. Well, would you like to introduce the wineries one by one, following your presentation, the second part, or we are just starting the tasting?
I think that it would be fun if people start tasting the wines, and we start. Each of us will talk, as we said, about the company, the first wine that is tasted of everybody. Is that all right? Does it
Yeah,
sound good?
perfect, perfect. Yes, I believe the more questions will come with time. Yeah, it's let's see what's going to happen. So let's start with the first wine, the first winery, which is Quinta do Valado, and I believe this is João. This is
Correct.
João, who is with us in the blue. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
I will, as agreed, I will give you a short introduction on Valado and then also tell you a bit about the wine. So Valado is just over 300-year-old estate in the Douro. We are in Peso da Régua, so we are the one closest to Porto in the Baixo Corgo. It is an estate, and this part of the story will be slightly repeated because us and Valdomião share a similar part of our story. Valado is owned, or still is owned, by the Ferreira family, which belonged to a very famous lady, Dona Antonia Adelaide Ferreira, who was my great grandmother. She was quite a famous personality in the Douro, and Valado was one of the estates that was used by the family to produce the wines for the family's port house. Valdomião shares a bit of that history, but Luisa will tell you a bit more about this. The key part for us here is that about 30 years ago, the family decided to sell the port house, but Valado stayed in my father and his cousin's branch of the family, just as Valdomião stayed in Luisa's family. So about 30 years ago, even though our estates have a very long history of producing wines for the family's port house brands, 30 years ago, we started with the single estate project. So making everything at Valado. And when I mean everything, I mean not only the production, growing, and vinification of the wines, but also the bottling and selling of the wines, which historically was done from the city of Porto at the end of the river. We have just over 100 hectares of vineyards divided between Quinta do Valado in Baixo Corgo and in the Superior Douro. The wines we're tasting today will be all from the lower Corgo, from Baixo Corgo. And I will invite everyone that's watching us to come and visit us. We also have a small or two small hotels in our estate, so you can come, stay in the vineyards, eat the local foods, drink the local wines, and have really a full experience. If there are no questions, I will move on to the first wine, which is Prima. Prima means first, so this is a perfect wine to start off with. But this is actually almost, I would say, starting from the end. And I'll explain what I mean. So the Douro is a very famous region. We have a lot of history and heritage from port wines. From here, we transitioned into red wines, in many cases using the same varieties like Cristiano explained, to make dry wines from varieties that we use for port wines. This is a little bit different. So this is a very fresh, light white wine, but it's made from a variety which is, it's 100% Muscatel Galego, which is a type of Muscat commonly found in the Douro. But Muscat is almost always used, or traditionally always used, to make sweet and very alcoholic wines in the Douro and in Setúbal, in the center of Portugal. It's a grape that is normally picked quite late, or even as a late harvest variety, and it usually has very high levels of sugar, very high levels of alcohol, and very low acidity. In this case, we try to do the exact opposite. So we call it Prima because these are actually the first grapes we pick, normally in the beginning of August. So sometimes more than 1 month before we start picking the red grapes. And we find something very interesting when we do this. The Muscat variety keeps its traditional aromatic profile, so it has a very sweet floral aroma, but without the alcohol or the sweetness. So 12.5% of alcohol, almost just over 0 grams of residual sugar. So it's completely dry wine. It has a very high or a very interesting natural acidity. So it's a very fresh and mineral wine, but it keeps the big, exuberant floral side of a Muscat. It's aged in stainless steel. So this is a wine meant to drink young. And we think it's a great way to show a traditional variety from the Douro in a completely different way. So something that was used for ports normally, but in this case used for an aperitif style white wine. If there are no questions, probably means my explanation was perfect, flawless. We can move on to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you, João. Well, there are some comments. First is Vinho Verde or Vinho Verdish, and second is great stone fruit and very refreshing and perfect. So pretty lot of comments for the first wine
I will answer to the first question, and it's a good comment at Vinho Verde. You will notice the bottle, the Alsace bottle, is a bottle that is very commonly used for Vinho Verde and for Alvarinhos. And the style of the wine, we try to make it on that light, high acidity, low alcohol. So the bottle is actually meant to make you think about Vinho Verde. So very happy about the comments.
And mineral acidity, very fresh, very refreshing. Yeah, let me just come back to the photos of your hotel as this was skipped, but this is pretty beautiful. And
this is a swimming pool in the Superior Douro, and actually it's a good example. You can see on the other side of the river how much more harsher and more extreme the climate is. This is about 5 kilometers from the border with Spain, and you can see how dry the land looks on the northern bank, which is what we're seeing on the picture.
Well, not almost dry. Yeah. There are some green parts.
Baixo Corgo. So the difference between the two pictures is the first subregion of the Douro and the last subregion of the Douro, and we can compare a lot more green on this.
Beautiful. Anyway, beautiful. We must visit. We must visit. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you're all invited to come and visit us.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments. Great for spring. Unfortunately, winter came back to Poland. Yes.
We have reds and then some port wines, so we have something for everything.
So we are ready for winter. Yeah.
Every climate.
Good. Thank you, João. Thank you very much. And yes, the second wine. Can you explain Bica Aberta fermentation? Well, yeah, the question.
Still for us. Maybe the winemaker amongst us can explain Bica Aberta more than us, or in the best way.
The Bica Aberta is basically a Portuguese expression that means open tap, and in reality, it's just a fermentation that only takes the very first juice without any pressure on the press for the white wines. So it's the natural juice when you basically open the skin of the grape or the berry, and the free running juice, either for the weight that the bunches have on each other, or just because you just slightly opened broke the skins of the grape and the first running juice. Then without any pressure at all, just the natural pressure of the juice. That's what we call Bica Aberta. And then if you put pressure in a press, then you get more juice. Of course, you extract all the juice, but that's not Bica Aberta. The Bica Aberta is the free running juice without any pressure. And it's a method used for the most interesting and the most pure of the juice of the grapes. And most of the times, the Bica Aberta happens when you make for the best wines that we make. In our case, is the same.
We forgot to mention the price. I think there's some questions, and I think it's important to keep mentioning the price. We will do ex-seller or retail price, whichever you. I think ex-sellers on the which is more.
The price, the retail price in the winery. If I come as a private consumer, right?
So as a private consumer, before I give you a good discount for a friend, of course. If I do not know you, then this wine is €8.50 on the shelf at the shop at Valado.
Okay. And how many bottles do you produce, more or less, of this
We
wine?
produce between 30 to 40,000 bottles, depending on the year. It's also a variety that we like a lot. We want to make more, but it's very tough to find more single variety Muscat vineyards in the Douro. So we're regrafting and replanting and trying to make a bit more, but so far between 30 and 40,000 bottles.
Perfect. Thank you, João. Thank you, Cristiano, for the explanation. And yes, guys from Winem Powiśle, you are way ahead. You are already tasting Newport wine, and yes, let's pass to Newport until they taste it to the end of the bottle. Yeah. Dirk, hello.
Hello. You hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you. Yes, we can see you. Hello.
So I am here in Fornello in a tea plantation. So it's not a wine area. It used to be, but my girlfriend wife, she decided to go more for tea than wine. And and today is the first day we are picking the leaves for the first tea of this year. So
sorry, it's not very common in Europe, I believe. Tea.
No, this is probably the only or the biggest or whatever plantation in Europe, mainland. We don't forget, Azores has a long tradition of making tea, but in mainland Europe, it's probably the first or only or biggest or whatever, something like that.
Okay, this is your time. Go ahead, and I turn off my camera and don't disturb you, right?
Okay, so we are tasting Redoma White, which is emblematic of what we are doing. Redoma started in 95, the white, 91, the red. I started working with Newport in 87. And it's been, I think, challenging times. A lot of things have happened in the last 30 years. And, Portuguese seem to complain a lot, but I must confess that I think Portugal is getting on a positive wave, and people are starting to be curious about Portugal. Let's face it, since the 80s, since Robert Parker, since modern times, people have been promoting more the simplicity of the logic, which is varieties, Chardonnay, Cabernet, blah, blah, blah. And so it was very difficult for a country like Portugal to come up with Rabo de Ovelha and Gouveia and even Touriga Nacional. It sounded also all very exotic, negative, but what was exotic negative, I think it turned into exotic positive. People are fed up now. I mean, of course, Cabernet and Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc have their place, but I think the world is sick, fed up with these varieties. And so what was exotically negative. Now it's exotically positive, even if you cannot mention the name or even read the name or you don't know the name. Just because it's not Cabernet and not this, it sounds interesting. And Portugal has gone a fantastic way of making better and better wines, and we are in a position that we can now bring individuality, character, and and this is where we are standing at the moment. And Redoma, in the beginning, well, I must confess, I was trying a little bit to be inspired by Burgundy, but a few years later, it went its own way, and this is not Burgundy want to be anymore. It's Redoma, and Redoma is from Douro, and it's a wine that is aged, fermented in barrels, 100%, and it's very vibrant and fresh. And this is another thing which is amazing about the Douro. Douro is a huge area. We're talking about 45,000 hectares, and it has north facing, south facing, east, and so on. The great vineyards for port are usually the ones that are more south facing at the bottom. But for making white wine, the logic is going to the heights, and the vineyards go to 800 meters or even more, north facing. And this is where you get the fresher, this is where you get wines with 12 and a half alcohol, which have firm acidity. The wood is there, but it's not woody. The balance is what we are looking for. And I think this is a little bit what Nipot is aiming at. Any questions? Hello, hello. I don't hear anybody.
I'm coming. Yes. Comments in chat. Mineral, oaky palate, good acidity, and well,
Hello.
do you hear me?
Yes. Redoma is like a glass thing you put over cheese or antiques to protect it from air or from getting dirty. So it's dome.
Okay. Great wine, very nice wine. Well, that's the comments coming, and this is the second wine. In Poland, we are very shy at the beginning of the lovely,
In the
lovely,
beginning.
even lovely already. Folks, we have 14 wines. And yeah, how do you manage the freshness in such a hot region as Douro is?
Well, it's the high vineyards, north-facing vineyards, and picking at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't tell it's Portugal nor Douro. Yeah, they wouldn't tell. They wouldn't say it's Portugal. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, that's. It seems positive. Okay, Dirk, do you want to make some presentation of your winery? We have some photos. But what was the pH level when you collect grapes? What was
Well,
the pH?
you actually, it's an interesting question because people usually go by maturity and they want ripe grapes. Um, and I tend to go more looking at, if I look at analysis, which I personally don't look, but my team does, I prefer to look more at acidity and moments where the acidity starts going down to stop and pick at the right time before it goes down the drain. So acidity is more important than the alcohol. okay, of course, it has to be not green and underripe. But in the Douro, we don't usually have that problem. So no, no problem. And I don't want to make a presentation of Nipot. I think Nipot is fairly known, and we have too many wines. So I
Okay.
will go on.
Okay. So just tell me, if I come to Quinta do Nápoles, how much it would be as a private consumer and no discounts. Yeah. How much it would be?
The wine.
Yeah, Redoma.
Oh, I don't usually buy it.
That's a good answer. So,
Uh,
folks,
19 euros or something like that.
19
No,
euros.
probably
Okay.
probably cheaper than that. I don't know.
Okay. Well, tell me, the total production of this wine is roughly
30,000, 40,000 bottles, depends on the year.
40,000. Okay. Okay. And you see the photos of.
I knew you were going to ask that, and my answer was going to be it's too cheap. But I restrained myself from answering, but I still do it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dirk. You'll come back very soon. So
All right,
don't
I'm
stay
here.
stay with your tea and yeah and please join us in a moment. And now we are coming back to the headquarter, and this is Cristiano Van Zeller and his wine VZ Douro White. Cristiano, hello.
Right. Thanks, Piotr. Can you hear me? All well?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, fine, go on, please.
Now, talking about Vanzellis and Company a little bit. Vanzellis and Company is the smallest company, but I'm the biggest guy. Doesn't mean anything. Basically, Vanzellis and Company, or my family has been in business in wine from the Douro since at least 1620. Although the Vanzellas only arrived here in Portugal at the beginning of the 18th century, or the end of 17th, beginning of the 18th century, they married into families that were already English and German and Portuguese that were already trading port and wine from the Douro at least in 1620. I'm the 14th generation of the family, non-stop in the wine business, and my children are now the 15th generation already in the business. Now, Vanzellis and Company had a lot of ups and downs. In the 19th century, it was sold by the family. It was bought back in 1937. It was sold again in 1993, and I restarted the company from scratch again in 2007. And we produce and sell overall around 50, 60,000 bottles a year. Now, we produce mostly port. We are a very traditional port company. We have 16 hectares of vineyards in different areas of the Douro, in different places of the Douro. We don't have one property as such. And we produce 3 reds and 2 white wines. So Vanzella, we do our reds, and I'll talk about the reds. The way you see these people crushing the grapes, this is how we make our reds and our ports, and both white and red ports, by the way. Now, talking about VZ Douro White, VZ Douro White is the first vintage was 2006. It was with this wine that I started back Vanzellas and Company in 2007. The company, we own 1 hectare of white wine grapes, but for another wine that we call CV Curriculum Vitae White, these wines, this VZ comes from grapes that are planted in the high altitudes in the northeast part of the Douro. We have a part of it is a field blend with very different grape varieties. We have more than 15 different grape varieties planted in our white vineyard. 10% going to this VZ bottling. The rest is Ravigato, Córdega, and Erinto. Are the main grape varieties planted for VZ White. We have we ferment in oak and we age in oak. About 85-90% 1-year-old oak, so used oak from the previous vintage for CV Curriculum Vitae. So there is practically no new oak in this wine. The aging process or the aging time is normally around 9 months after the fermentation is finished. We have the way we ferment. We bring in a refrigerated container, 40-foot refrigerated container. We put our casks in there, and the fermentation lasts a little bit over a month in general at a very cool temperature in that refrigerated container. This is how we work it. We produce between 2,500, 3,000 bottles and 6,000 bottles, depending on the vintage, for this wine. And we do a few magnums. And telling about the Exceller price, the Exceller price of the wine is around 20 euros. The retail price for consumer, of course, not the Exceller for importers, but the consumer price is around 20 euros. I don't see any comments, so people probably don't like it. No, I'm seeing some of it. I'm just kidding.
Wait, Cristiano. Noble wine, slightly oaky style. I like it in a sunny day. Not true. Not true about your last comments. I believe.
Not the sunny day.
Missing some fruit.
We don't make. I don't look for a lot of obvious fruit in our wines, in our white wines. We look for wines that mature in bottle, and so these wines are for maturing in bottle. The white 2019 is pretty young though. The acidity is all natural. We pick when the pH is around 2.93. There's one funny thing that we do with the white grapes. As I explained before with the Bica Aberta thing, when we crush the grapes, slightly open the berries, and we only use for our white wines the very first running juice. And when we're measuring the pH, as the juice is running, we measure the pH every 2 minutes. And when the pH starts going up, and that's when we start pressing. If the pH starts going up at all, we just stop, turn the tap around, put everything else in the lagar with the skins and everything, and we make white port. So to make a bottle of, if we didn't make port at all, from the picking and the amount of wine, the potential wine that we have when we pick the grapes, until we put into the bottle, we only use about 27% of the total juice, potential juice of the grapes. The rest goes straight into port, and we make very traditional white port, crushing the grapes by foot in the lagar, an open lagar, with oxidation and everything. So this is really the finest juice for the dry wines.
Okay, young, but the balance is already nice. Very round, quite nice acidity, elegant wine. Do you think that oak-aged whites from Douro have some aging potential? Well, that's
absolutely. We can trace back our wines to 2006. So I still have bottles of every vintage, both in bottles and magnums, and I taste them every now and then. A friend of mine opened a magnum of 2006 the other day, and it was blind, and it was one of the best. Certainly the best wine on the table. There was many Burgundies and top Burgundies on the table, and it basically killed all the Burgundies. To be honest, there was some of them were really quite good. A bit young, the Burgundies, some of them, but the potential aging, nobody could guess it was a Douro wine. I'm going to give the example of Rodoma Special 1990. Dirk, help me, 1996, 1997. One bottle, I remember one of the very first Rodoma Reserve that you did. And I opened a bottle when it was 20 years old with my wife. The bottle had stayed in my cellar for 20 years, and the bottle was just astonishing. It was one of the best white wines I've ever tasted, and I've tasted a lot of white wines in my life.
I will underline that I had a bottle of, and if anyone can find a 20 or so bottle of Rodoma, go for it. It will make a run for any Burgundy, any white Burgundy for sure.
And these wines are very much into that line. And now, who is the importer of this wine? My good friends, nobody. With Calder Maria, I was working with Milzinski. I'm just selling to Milzinski and my good friend Robert a white port. Nobody is buying these wines at the moment in Poland.
Well, perhaps it may change, yeah, after this tasting. Let's hope. Well, I frankly speaking, I've never seen, our attendees so active at the beginning of the tasting. So, or it's an earthquake already, or or they will be exhausted at the end of the tasting. Let's move forward, guys.
The retail price for the VZ white and red is the same. It's around 20 euros. It has an ex-seller price of 10. I don't mind saying that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move on, as otherwise we can't finish before before Tuesday, right? So now this is Quinta do Vale Miau, if I pronounce it correctly, and Luisa. Am I right?
Yes, Luisa Lazavo, that's my name.
Yeah.
So I'm here in representation of the family. I'm together with João, as he said before. We share the same ancestor. In a way, I feel that's a question more of wine, not a question that transcends wine. Also, she's a great example of an entrepreneur in the Douro, but I think some episodes of her life, as I said, transcend a little bit the Douro, the winemaking, and then she shows a great tenacity and how it is to be a great entrepreneur. So in Valmião, she was a bit visionary, because she, being from Reua, where Valado is, decided to move east, so to move inland towards Spain, towards the border with Spain. And actually, in Valmião, she bought barren land. It was the only estate that she did from scratch. Actually, she was obliged to wait for 10 years. She bought the land, and for 10 years she did absolutely nothing. She kept on renting the place for people who wanted to extract wood, which was a very important source of energy. But she knew that the train would arrive there, because it had been starting in the line. It started in Porto. So only 10 years after, that means in 1888, she starts the plantations, and there are records that shows that at a certain point there were about 600 Galicians working in the property, because there was no enough manpower in Portugal. So it was a quite bold move. It's very interesting to see the records where our employees were saying one to the other, well, let's hope that Dona Antonia gets some fun out of this crazy move, because she won't get any profit. And actually, the man who writes this, and this is why I say she sometimes is genius, it was the man that she made the one in charge of all the buildings and, supervising the building of the Quinta. His name was Antonio Clara da Fonseca. So to make the long story short, because the story gives it's the source of a book. Let's say my father inherited a small portion of the property, about 6%. But little by little, throughout his life, he started making deals with several relatives until in '94 he became the sole owner. His career was in Ferreira, that in the meantime had been bought by Sograp. But of course, with this changing situation, he and my brother, who in the meantime had made his degree in enology in Villarreal, started to envision the possibility of stop selling the grapes that were basis of many ports of Ferreira, but also of Barca Velha, which you've probably heard, and launching their wines, our wines. At the moment, I was not working with them, but launching the wines with their own brand. So this happened in '99. In '99, the two of them did the first wines that were released 2 years later, as we still do today. This is a little bit of our history, and as I said, now it's only the branch of my father, meaning my parents and my brothers and I, and this is, of course, represents a big development in the Quinta because it allows for faster decisions and an easier management. So the Meandro, about so we do have a white. It's also called Meandro white, but it was out of stock in Miałczyński, who's our importer. So we start with the reds, and we start with Meandro. So Meandro is we started with a Bordeaux approach, meaning that we had the first wine Quinta de Valmião and the second wine Meandro. Meander is the big curve of the river. Now lately we have moved a little bit out of that simple approach, and we have been doing some mono vineyard wines that I will also show you later. But in the beginning it was Quinta de Valmião and Meandro only. And this wine reflects a lot of the typical grape varieties in the Douro. The backbone is also the backbone of the property itself, which is Touriga Nacional. Most of the plantings that my father did in the 70s were of this grape variety. At that stage in the 70s, people started to understand each grape variety by itself, which was not the case up until then, because as you know, the norm was to have the mixture of grape varieties in the vineyards. But my father always planted grape variety per parcel. So this allows to my brother nowadays to have a very interesting knowledge about how each of them behaves under different agricultural years, because all of them are different. So it makes it easier for him. So we do all the vinification, all the plantation and the vinification of the varieties separated, but my brother does the blending prior. So now we are doing the blending of the 2020 Meandro. So he did the blending prior to the bottling also here in the Meandro 2019. We use the lagash, so the granite vessels, let's say, but only for what we call a cold maceration. Then we transfer it to vats with temperature control, where we can tame the extraction a lot more. So I think this is a wine that's quite, it has a good structure. It's a Douro wine, no doubt about that, but it also has a lot of freshness, and I think this is brought mostly by the percentage of Touriga Nacional, which in this particular vintage is about 44%. And then the other two most important are Tinta Roriz and Tinta Barroca. Residual of Alicante Boucher and Tinta Barroca. So this is a little bit the philosophy of the Meandro bread. I don't know if there's questions. If there are, I need to put my glasses.
Which wines do we recommend to decant before drinking.
Which one?
Which out of
I-
all, I think this is for all the wines. I'm not sure if. Well, I'll try to summarize.
Think
Generally,
so. It's a general question to all the
I think
wines
we not have very old vintages today, unfortunately, and I think decanting, in my personal opinion, becomes more necessary as you drink older vintages of any wine. In terms of the wines we're tasting today, I would say the ones from older vines, which are more concentrated, might gain a little bit with decanting, but seeing as they are all fairly recent vintages, I think they would not need decanting. Maybe you agree or disagree?
the older vintages,
Yeah.
definitely, yes. Sometimes also the new vintages.
Yeah, I like decanting the new
Yeah.
vintages
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
sometimes they are too powerful, and decanting helps them open up a little bit.
So the opinions are divided as always,
Yeah.
if I understand well. And well, there are some philosophical statements as classic Douro is classic, which we cannot disagree with that. And love its rich fruitness, and soft yet sound tannins. And best food pairing, yes, best food pairing. This is a
I
question.
would say for me, Andrew, for sure something savory that really matches this a wine that has quite a good volume. I would say a savory meat, something of the kind, and also game.
I have one of my uncles, when he was asked fish or meat, he would say plenty. So perhaps that's a good food pairing.
Okay, and what's the price at the winery, Luisa?
It's about 14 years.
14.
Yes.
And the production is roughly?
I was trying to see in zlotys. I'll try to check because I didn't have time.
No, we think in euros. Don't worry.
So, and the production is about 200,000 bottles.
200,000. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, good. Right. So, Luisa, this is the second wine. It's also from you, wine number 5.
Okay.
Go on, please.
So this is I don't know if you have, but it's probably too much work to look for it. So I had a plan that I sent you with all the parcels. This is a parcel that was already planted by my brother in the very beginning of our venture, let's say. So in '98, it's granite, totally granite tot. As Christian was saying, normally that's right. So the one you see on the left-hand side by the winery, you see the roof of the winery in orange. That's the one.
So number 5.
Number 5.
Make it easier.
Okay, thank you, João. So that one is still granite. So as Cristiano was saying, normally the granite is more on the top of the mountains, but in Malmião, it goes a little bit further down, almost until the river. We have parcels with granite, but this one is totally granite, so it gives a Touriga Nacional that is more fresh. And so my brother was always thinking this wine is very good, but it doesn't fit any, not Meandro, not Valmião. It will mark them too much and change their profile. So with this idea, we started a series of mono vineyard wines, and which shows this diversity. Cristiano was talking about that we have at Valmião, which accounts for 3 types of soil, so granite, schist, and also alluvial soil closer to the river. So these 3 wines that we have with the brand Montbihan each one of them. Two come from granite, and one comes from the alluvial soil. So it shows a lot about these different, all these different soils show up in the wine. And so the vinification is pretty much the same. Of course, the parcel is all vinified separately from the other vineyards. But my brother does the fermentation in big vats, wooden vats. It's something that is a bit of an experiment. He did this the first time in the previous vintage, so he's still learning a little bit about this. And the wine is really it's a Touriga Nacional, really fresh, really floral, and I think it's a fantastic wine in my opinion. Yes, it tastes quite a good acidity, and this comes from both the grape variety and the type of soil. So one thing that we notice, it's very interesting to see in Valmiel, is that if we taste a Touriga from schist that we also have, and this Touriga, we'll see the difference. It really makes a difference.
One is a bit more schist.
Good. Thank you very much, Luisa. And let me ask you about the price and the production.
The price is 35 euros.
25 euros, yeah.
35.
35. Okay, 35. And the production is?
Of these, we make about 8,000 bottles.
8.
And it's that it won't change because it's that particular vineyard, so it won't change. It's impossible to change the quantities. As long as the philosophy of the wine is this will be the quantity.
Mm-hmm. More comments coming in chat, if I see well. Okay, so let's thank you very much, Luisa. And now we try to connect with Manuel, who is not at Quinta do Crasto and who is in Porto. Well, Manuel, hello, Manuel Lobo. Please join us. Press the 2 buttons, and then we will see you. Yes, he did it. Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, let me correct you, because I'm actually at the Quinta do Crasto, and all of the other Douro boys, with the exception of Dirk, they are at the office in Porto, the office of Quinta do Crasto in Porto. So I'm just here, but no worries. But let me see if this works. So I can show you here the view. So there's the river. And
oh yeah,
okay, here you go. Just in the middle of the region and the winery.
Go on, Manuel. It's your time. Sorry for messing up.
No worries. Great.
Go on.
Close the door. So a short introduction about Quinta do Crasto, and about me. My name is Manuel Lobo. I'm the head winemaker here at Crasto. In the pictures you have the brothers, the Roquette brothers. So Miguel on the left and Tomás on the right. They are the owners, and they are running the company now. And we have the oldest registers of winemaking of Quinta do Crasto. They come from 1615. There is the family also on the picture. So there is Rita, Tomás, Miguel, and of course the parents, Tita and Jorge. So Leonor and Jorge Roquette. and so that's the picture family of the estates. Quinta do Crasto, it's a family-owned estate. We the first registers of winemaking since 1516, so a long history around this estate. Here you can see a picture of the beautiful sites of the Quinta. Nowadays we are based in the right bank of the river, in the central region, which is the Cima Corgo, or Alto Douro, and also in the Upper Douro region, which is the region where Luisa was talking about, near to Valmiel. So actually nowadays we control 250 hectares of vines, which is quite a big amount of area of vineyard to run. But the good thing is that we have a lot of different styles of vineyards. We have the field blends, the old vines that the other Douro boys already talked about. We have some new plantations. There's a good picture of how we pick the fruit in a very old vineyard, an emblematic vineyard, which is Vinha Maria Teresa. So in 20 kilogram boxes, everything by hand, hard work. That's the Douro. That's like we need to suffer a bit to make sure that we pick on the right day, and that we achieve all the good conditions for the fruit to arrive to the winery. But between these 250 hectares of vines, we produce several different styles of wines. We produce white wines, we produce one rosé, we produce mainly red wines, and also, of course, port wines, because this is heritage, and we have a long tradition in producing port wine. So we produce ruby and tawny ports nowadays. So basically, is this we are seeing some different pictures of the wineries. For me and for my team, it's very important to work in a very detailed, with very attention, and for us, a good winemaking is not to damage the identity of the fruit that comes from the vineyard. So to respect as much as possible, and the identity and the fruit that's coming into the winery. That's our wine shop on the image as well, with some of our products. It's very cozy, and it's a very beautiful place. Also, you can come and visit, and we provide tastings and very good experiences, especially during harvest time, which is fantastic, and there is a lot of fun. You can come into the winery. You can do some food trading with us, and a lot of different experiences. Okay. Okay, wine number 6, and the first wine for Crasto. And I was telling you a while ago that we have vineyards divided between the central region and also the upper Douro region, where we call it Douro Superior. And this specific wine that we are going to taste, it's the 2018 harvest, and comes from the Upper Douro, the Douro Superior. And the name of the wine is Crasto Superior. So all of on our wine range, and if you can visit the website of Crasto, you can see all the Burgundy bottles, the Burgundy shaped bottles, they come from the Upper Douro region. So this is the red blend that comes from the Upper Douro. 18 harvest was a very challenging year, but which I really love, with a good freshness. And I think this one has a beautiful aging potential. So basically here, this property, which is a property with 140 hectares, and it's it's north face, so protected from the heat of the very intense heat that we have in some years in the Upper Douro. And we have here several different plots with different grape varieties, but this specific blend, it's made from the best plots of the varieties that are Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, which is a grape variety that really is very well adapted to the Upper Douro. Also, Tinta Roriz, which is very interesting when it's on the right terroir, and a little bit of Sozão, only 5%. Sozão, it's a Portuguese grape variety that has a very high acidity and a very intense color, which is, I believe, it's interesting on this specific blend because it really gives a very natural acidity. 18 was a very fresh year, very elegant year, so very challenging to choose the right moment of picking. For me, there are three big moments for the success of a wine, and the first moment is day of picking day. So it's very important that we are very accurate on the picking day, and to pick the fruits when there is no overripening or underripening. So it's very important to try to have a very short window of picking, and to have the availability of picking on that very short window. This wine is a wine made with those four different grape varieties, and 17 years old vineyards already with some maturity, some age. It's here we have this wine comes in 20 kilogram boxes, sorting table on the reception, then goes into stainless steel tanks where it ferments for 7 days with temperature control, and then goes into barrel. And in here 12 months of barrel, and around 35% of new oak, new French oak, and the rest second and third year oak. Okay, it's a wine that you can drink young. It's always better to decant. For me, I even if the wines are young, I prefer to decant them, because if they have a little bit of a, if we give them the possibility of to breathe a little bit and to get a little bit of more oxygen, the wines really improve. And even if you have a good glass and with the right temperature, it's very important that the glass is a little bit open, and for the wines to get a little bit of oxygen. It's a wine that you can drink young, but also you can store, and you can leave it for a couple of years and see how the aging is going. So I don't know if there is some questions or.
There are some comments in chat. Silky pellet, black pepper next to the to dark fruits, game, and very elegant wine, excellent barrel integration. And there was a question about the importer. So the question is: this is Zasada Vino, Zasada Vina, or well?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me check.
Yeah,
because winemakers never know the price or.
Okay, so I won't ask it. I won't ask about it. Okay, but you know how many bottles do you produce?
Yeah, well, depends on the years, but this is a wine that we normally do around 250,000 bottles, around that.
250,000 bottles, so pretty a lot.
Yeah, it's a wine that it's not our. I never like to say this word, entry level, because we have the Crash to Douro Red, which is a wine before this, and this is already a wine that goes into barrel aging. It's a serious wine. It's a wine that we can store and to give some aging potential on our private cellars. And so it's a wine that the price level should be around 15 euros, but it's a very serious wine for the in my opinion.
Indeed it is.
So well, the importer, it's Zasada, exactly.
Yes,
but you can, if you go to our website, you have all the contacts of our importers. So it's you have there the address, phone numbers, well, everything there. Okay.
Yeah, and we stay with you, or you stay with us, please, as the next wine is also you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's it.
So now,
Still, sorry, still great, fruity, good balance.
thank you
The
very
last
much.
comment and go on, please.
Okay, so next wine, it's a very special wine for us. It's a classic wine for Crasto. It's the Reserva All Vines. We call it Reserva Vinhas Velhas. And the wine before, we were just quite near to the border of Spain. So if we came down the river and we come to the Quinta, the estate of Crasto, and this wine comes from here. So the first vintage that we produced on this wine was 1994, which is in a very good shape, but we only have a few bottles, unfortunately. And this is a wine that we produce every year, and it's a very interesting wine because it's made from different field blends, actually 42 different small plots of old vineyards, all of them with different altitudes, different exposures. Of course, when we say a field blend, it means that these vineyards were planted 70 years ago. Well, it's the average that we believe there is in this plant, and 67 years old. But we say, if you check the grape varieties, it says 25 to 30 different grape varieties. That I can't say much about this because actually everything is mixed. So if you ask me the right percentages of the different varieties there, I'm not able to answer. But we are studying. And one of the plots that from all vineyards, it's called Vinha Maria Teresa. And so far we have identified 54 different grape varieties. When I say different grape varieties, different genotypes. So this truly is the identity of the Douro, the differentiation. This is a great motivation for me and for my team, for winemaking team, for viticulture team, because this is something unique that if even us, we don't know exactly what we have on our own vineyards, it's very difficult to copy. Challenge to produce every year. So let's imagine how do we, I was talking about picking day now. So if we have one single variety to pick from one vineyard, well, we can measure everything. We can be very scientific. We can know how the phenolics are developing, how the alcohol is, how the sugars are developing the potential alcohol, how the acidity is coming down or not. Well, we can study everything. But imagine if we have a field blend where we have those 25 to 30 different grape varieties mixed. And how do we pick this? It's a tricky question, but it's very difficult. So that's the beautiful part of the life of being a winemaker or a viticulture, wine producer, is having the challenging of producing a wine that comes from a vineyard like this every year. So when we pick the one plot of the specific wine with this so many different grape varieties, some of them I'm sure that the picking day, some of them are a little bit overripe, and some of them are a little bit underripe. But the window to select the picking optimum moment, the most of the grape variety should be near the optimum point. So for that, we need to know exactly the varieties that are early ripeners and the ones that take more time to mature, and then we need to take our decision. So this wine is a wine that on the palate should have Still quite a few edges. We are talking about a 15 that should be already very integrated and very balanced, but it's always a wine with a lot of personality. Also, the vinification methods, it's the classic methods of Crasto. Some of the plots, well, we receive in 25 kilogram plastic boxes, and they go through a sorting table. Then we move them 100% distemmed here, and then we move them into to temperature control, very small stainless steel tanks, where we can, some vineyards they give around 2 tons, the other ones 3, 4, 5, we maximum 5 tons per plot. And after fermentation, the wine goes into barrel where it stays 18 months. Here we have a little bit of American oak that can go until 15% normally, and the rest is French oak. The good thing about this wine is that it's not possible to have a recipe to produce a wine like this, because the year has a really big impact on the wine like this. So we need to taste the wines every day, and according to the tasting, to say, okay, let's extract a little bit more, or we go softer, because it's very important. Also, the moment of pressing, when we separate skins from the liquid. Okay, so it's a big moment also. I don't know if there is any questions.
Well, yes, some comments. So rich, so complex nose, so intense on palate.
Very sexy.
Very sexy.
Yeah. We try to do our best.
Yes. Well, that's number 7 already, but we have still 7 more, guys.
Manuel or the wine? Okay. I hope both.
Don't forget about speed-tunes. Thank you. Thank you, Manuel. And what is the price, more or less?
Well, the price should be around near the 28 to 30 euros.
28. And the production is?
The production varies according to the years, because we only select the top plots to go into this wine, but it's around 80,000 bottles, around that.
Yeah, there are some comments about who is very sexy, but this comes from Douro boys. Is it Manuel or the wine? And great, really outstanding wine.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you very much. Don't stay tuned, please, as you're coming back as number 13. Okay?
Thank you very much.
If you are still alive, of course. Yes. Yeah. See you soon. Bye. And we're coming to the city, yeah, and not to the Quinta do Crasto. Hello, guys. Well, to the Quinta do Crasto in the city. Quinta do Crasto.
We are in Crasto's office, but no one from Crasto is here.
We occupy.
Okay.
Yeah, we are surrounded by very beautiful old bottles of Crasto Reserva. We are choosing which ones to take.
Okay, so we won't finish before Tuesday. Go on, João, please.
So, on the Valado Reserva field blend, I have a very tough job explaining this wine after Manuel has spoken already about their field blend, because actually the most important part of these wines is explaining the vineyards, the old vineyards over 60 or 70 years of age, where we have all of these vineyards planted. Crasto uses the word vinhas velhas, old vines, and we use the saying field blend. Both of them mean more or less the same thing. It's basically to explain that these old methods of planting the vineyards have everything mixed, planted together. So the key really for the quality of this wine, like Manuel said, is choosing the right time to pick all of these grapes at the same time, and then we have to do a manual triage to select the ones that are not good before they go into the fermentation. Now, I will try to say a few things that Manuel did not mention. Personally, for me, the key part, or one of the most important parts of this of these old vineyards, is the behavior of what is inside the bottle. So with the wines from younger vines, 15, 20, 25 years, they're a little bit more like younger people, very excited to show you everything, and they usually tell you everything straight away. With the old vineyards, however, they're a little bit like older people. So old vines produce less than half of the quantity of the younger vineyards. They have twice as much concentration, so there's much more inside the wine, but they're much more elegant, slow, and they take their time in the way they show themselves. Hopefully, a good example of this is, even though the Reserva 2015 you tried before from Crasto is entering a very good drinking age, this, comparing to that, is a very young bottle. It's from 2019, so it's had just over a year or almost a year in the bottle. It's a wine that definitely has a very long aging potential, but hopefully it will show itself that even when these wines are young and very concentrated and quite powerful, they are very elegant. They're very well behaved. They show themselves in a very elegant way. And this, for us, is possibly the most important thing about these old vineyards. They give us an elegance that we cannot find in other vines. I would add something else, which is this is the kind of wines that should be decanted. So young or old, but in the old field blend wines, the more concentrated wines, they will all gain a bit with being decanted. And definitely, these are the wines that have a very long aging potential in the bottle. So anything from old vineyards or field blends in the Douro, as a rule of thumb, they will age very well, and they will always become better with more time. We make around between 35 and 40,000 bottles of this wine. We are also limited, like Crasto, to the old vines that we have. It costs 28 euros on the shelf in Portugal, and I'm not sure if there are any questions. I did not mention the aging. It spends 16 to 18 months in French oak barrels, majority of which are second use. So we're not trying to add the flavor of the wood. We are trying to smoothen the tannins and the harshness of the wines so that they are drinkable, or more drinkable, when they are young, when they are released. And no questions. No one is saying it's better than Crasto, so I think I can stop talking now.
No, João, I really loved your theory about old people becoming more elegant. I'm still waiting for this.
Me too.
But that's very positive. New comments are coming. Great concentration of aromas from old bushes, beautiful wine, and somebody is writing something.
The one thing I will add is, as we are tasting these wines, and especially when they're young, they're very layered wines. So there's a lot of concentration in the wines. All of the varieties of all of the reds we've tried so far will be represented somehow in these wines. So you will find a lot of the aromas, a lot of the same fruit as we have in the different wines. But in these field blends, normally they will come at different stages. So when you open the wine, it's very closed, very concentrated. And then as you keep opening it, then you'll open into the smoother spices, into the tobaccos, into the mature fruits. So these are really very layered wines. And I think perfect time to use the expression, these are slow wines. This is a perfect place to talk about this. These are definitely slow wines. They're more wintry wines, cold days by the fireplace. And generally they harmonize very well with slow foods, with game meats, long dinners. So these are the kind of wines that really gain with some more attention, with some more time on them.
Well, so new comments coming. Beautiful wine, leafy pine comes. What was the influence of phylloxera, and earthy? And new comments are coming. So extractive.
Maybe Cristiano wants to comment on the influence of phylloxera on these old vines.
Well, basically, phylloxera disappeared in the end of the 19th century. So, what we have in the Douro in the last, as in Europe, in the last 100 and something years, phylloxera has no. Either we don't have a memory for the past because it's too long away, and dry wines never existed in that time in the Douro that we can look at them now. So basically, I would say none at the moment, 0. But 100 years old is 1920s. And phylloxera stroke in 1863. Phylloxera started in France in 1863, in the Douro in 1865, and by 1996 the whole started the complete replanting of the Douro. So until 1908, in 10 years, 12 years, 20,000 hectares of the Douro were totally replanted. There is no memory of what happened before phylloxera, with one exception in the Douro, but that's non-grafted vineyard at Quinta de Noval, but only making vintage port. Quinta de Noval Nacional, as you all may know.
Okay. Thank you, Cristiano. And this is magnificent wine, rich wine. Well, so it was they just needed time to write. Well, this is number 9, and this is CV Curriculum Vitae and Cristiano again. Hello, and price. Yes, price.
28 euros. Wow.
28 euros.
The value, how cheap.
Good, great. Cristiano, please.
Right. CV Curriculum Vitae is, don't say underpriced because they're going to raise the prices now and we can't drink.
Just move to 30 now.
Now, CV Curriculum Vitae, I produced the first wine in 2003, the first vintage. It's a single vineyard. It comes from one single vineyard in the Rio Torto. The Rio Torto is right in the center of the Douro, in the Cima Corgo, just on the south shore of the River Douro. It's a subsidiary river of the Douro. And it has 3.2 hectares of very old vines. The vines are now between 80 and 90 years old. They were 20 years younger when I bought it in 2003, of course. It has more than 35 grape varieties. We're now finishing. It will take us another 2 years to finish the taking up and noting all the details of all the vines that are there, or all the grape varieties. The CV is north facing. It's the vineyard where it's very cool in general. It gets sun, but it's cool enough. But it also suffers the outside temperature. The best thing that combines very hot temperatures and the sun rays don't hit it directly because it's facing north. And so even with the environment temperature can be very hot at sometimes, it produces very powerful, very structured wines, but with an enormous acidity, natural acidity, be it because of some of the different grape varieties that are planted there, but also because of the age of the vines and the soil itself and how we work the soil. We farm this vineyard with horses. We use natural organic fertilizers only, and we produce between 5,000 and 8,000 bottles depending on the vintage. Magnums, double magnums, and 9-liter bottles. The production, the fermentation is made 100% in lagars, with foot treading, so the grapes are crushed by foot, and the fermentation goes until the end in the granite tank, open tanks, which helps getting the necessary oxygen during the fermentation. To tame the tannins. This is a 2016. These wines need time to open and need time in bottle. We sell them only when it's at least 1 year aged in bottle before being put on the market. Any question on this? I'm trying to control the time. I like that dry pine forest comment. It's an interesting point because one of the characteristics of Douro wines, and young ports mainly, but Douro gets that, is that idea, this special I don't know, fragrance of the forests that we have. We have some pines around at the top of the hills. This is lower near the river, but we have some pines. We have some cork trees surrounding the olive trees and cork trees surrounding the vineyard, but also have a bush, which is gum sisters. The Spanish called it jara, we call it steva, which is very resinous. What smells is the leaf, not the flower. White flowers, but the flower doesn't smell at all. And it's very resinous, the smell. It's very resinous, like dry pine forest, as you mentioned. And it's very interesting that you get that in many of the Douro wines in general.
Yeah, and there is also moss and I believe mushrooms.
It's mushrooms. It's probably
strong tannins. Yeah, new comments coming.
Yes, that's the foot treading and the way we work in the lagars. It's important to make the tannins, to tame the tannins, not to be too harsh and too extractive. And we try to avoid that when we do the fermentation. That's why we do it in an open.
Mm-hmm. And the wine is imported?
Again, the same thing. The same thing with VZ. We haven't exported any of this wine for the last 5 years to Poland.
What is the price roughly?
The
retail, if I come to
retail, it's about 75 euros.
75 euros.
Yeah.
Okay. And the production is?
It's between 4.5, 5, and 8,000 bottles, depending on the vintage.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Cristiano. Thank you very much. Well, let's hope this situation may change pretty soon with your importer in Poland. And thank you. Stay with new comments coming. The best food pairing for this wine and very complex and rich wine.
Thank you for the comments. Food pairing, I personally like game. Fowl like partridge or pheasant, but also venison, roe deer, wild boar, yeah, too. And in Portugal we eat a lot of codfish, salted dry codfish, as you know. And normally, because of the olive oil we use very good olive oil for that. Also, in general, it's a great match. These tannins with the grease of the olive oil and the saltiness of the cod and the texture of the cod. We have not red wine with cod, not white wine with cod. Normally, we have red wine with cod. And all these Douro wines you've tasted so far are fantastic with the dry cod.
Okay, good, great. Thank you very much, Cristiano. And yes, Dirk Nieport again. Hello, Dirk Nieport from the tea plantation. Hello, Dirk Niepert, are you with us? Wine number 10, and it's Charm. Hello, hi. Yeah, go on, please.
Right. So we're talking about Charm 2019.
It is.
We have been talking, you've been listening to a lot of what is happening in the Douro. Charm is yeah, how shall I say, special wine, different wine, strange wine, wrong wine, interesting wine. Anyway, it's from Simacorgo. It's from vines which are, yeah, over 80 years old. And well, the story behind this wine is that one day I was with a dentist who is a wine freak, and he opened a Romane Conti Latache 91. And funny enough, I smelled it, tasted it, and I said, well, this smells like Côte Rôtie, like Syrah. But then again, I said, this is too fine, too elegant to be Côte so it must be Burgundy. So it must be Latache 91 DRC. And a few months later, the same thing happened somewhere else. And what struck me was, why is the RC the way it is? You like it or you don't, but I must confess that I do like it a lot. We can't afford to drink it, but that's another story. But you can afford to drink La Charme. But the thing was that, in a way, Burgundy was striving for a bit of warmth, heat, and Pinot Noir and Burgundy and the elegance and so on. And in the Douro, we live in a different planet, and so in a way, trying to make something which tastes like Burgundy is a most stupid thing. But I'm a stupid person sometimes, and I had this dream, and I thought that by making the wine with 100% stems and a lot of extraction, but very short maceration, would maybe be interesting. And this is a bit the result. And 2019 is a very good example of what we are doing these days, which is the word sexy was used a few times. This is a very sexy, elegant wine with structure, with elegance, but firm tannins. And I think, well, since we have been making this officially since 2002, one can say that the wines age very well. So we don't have to hide in expectation that we don't know. Yes, we know. The 2002 is looking really good and still young. So it's made in Lagage, 100% with the stems and foot trodden, and it's just I think a wonderful wine. Funny enough, in the beginning everybody was against it and thought this is not typical Douro. And there we are in the situation where what the hell is typical Douro, because Douro is such a diversity of terroirs and heights and things like that. So I hope you like it. I don't know if there are any. How long the maceration? Yeah, it can be 24 hours. No, usually 48 or a bit longer than that. But basically, when it starts fermenting, we take it out.
Okay.
The food pairing, mushrooms, pasta with cheese. Yeah, I think it's a wine that is very easy if you like meat, everything dairy, deer and things like that, exotic meats that have a lot of character go very well.
Good. Perfect. New comments. Yes, we like it. Fantastic experience. And I won't ask you about the price as you don't know it.
No, it's about 90 euros or less. Yeah,
90 euros. Okay.
yeah. It's too
Okay.
cheap. It's underpriced, as someone was saying.
Yes. And the production is about
It's between 8,000 and 12,000 bottles usually.
12,000 bottles. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I must say I like it very much for a long time already. But well, yeah. It's
It's
thank
quite
you.
all right.
Sorry.
It's quite all right, as the English say.
Yes, you may say so. It's pretty fine, pretty nice. Good. Thank you, Dirk, very much.
All right.
Hello, Dirk. We have one
Yep.
sommelier that did a harvest at Naples in 2019. Do you see it?
Yes. Ultreia 2013. Yes. This is a fantastic collaboration. This is one of my problems. I like to share and I like to learn from other people. And Raul Perez is an amazing person from Bierzo, and he has been making some wines with us, and in 2013 he did as well. And it's very interesting because we let him do whatever he wants, which sometimes is scary because sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't, and he insists, no, don't worry, just leave it like that. And but it's what is amazing is when the wines are in barrel and you taste our wines, and then suddenly there is Raul Perez. It tastes totally different, and that's a very rewarding thing. That his wines, even though they are made with grapes that come from us in a way, they have his character, and he's a fantastic person, and he's made some of the best wines. We make a wine in Ribera Sacra with him, uh, which is Ladredo, and basically I think he learned a lot from me, and I learned a lot from him, and it's this is my university is sharing with people like Raul Perez or Telmo Rodriguez or Fritz Haag, in this case Wilhelm Haag, and other people. And sharing is caring.
Oh, someone is writing something still in the chat, so let's wait for a moment. And you produce also the wines in Douro, right?
Yes, and down by other. Yep, it's again a very interesting triangle to be in the north of Portugal in three areas which are next to each other, and we don't vinify in a very technological way, so everything is made more or less the same. We do a bit more stems, less stem, but very little extraction, and it's so funny to see the results. The terroir makes a difference, so the climate conditions, the soils, and everything. And it's again, it makes us understand where we are in terms of Douro, Bairrada, and down. It's very, very, very positive.
Okay, so the question is from Puro Hotel from Krakow, but Puro, dear Puro, I will explain it to you afterwards what does the charm mean. Yeah, and what
Well,
variety.
in very, very short words, charm is, the name says a lot of things, but it's mostly vineyards around Valmendige in the Pinhão Valley. They are very old wines, very all mixed varieties. The youngest vineyard is probably 80 years old. The main variety is Touriga Franca, but there's probably no Touriga Nacional, but there's another 30, 40 other varieties. And it's fruit trodden, as I said before, so 100% stems. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Dirk. It
All right.
was a pleasure. It was a pleasure as always. And hope to meet you soon in Poland or in Portugal.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. Sorry. Yes, you're coming back. You're coming back with number 12. Yeah, and we are coming. We're going to the city, and this is Quinta do Aremião and Meandro Finest Reserve Port. So we are entering the next level. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just take the opportunity to complement a little bit of what I said previously regarding to the Quinta, and in what regards what kind of activities we have in visitors and regarding visitors and tourism. We do have started a touristic operation, let's say, of a very nice tour, several types of tour. Some of them include a jeep ride in the forest part of the Quinta that we have, because 1/3 of Valmião is still and it will always be forest. So it's a very nice ride, and then followed by a tasting in the winery. Okay, so that's just for people wanting to visit us. It's really a nice operation that I think we started 1 year prior to the pandemic. Okay, and now we are back at it. As regards sports, Quinta de Balmião has been making vintages since the beginning. That is since 2000. But this finest reserve, we started more or less 6 years ago. Because in the beginning we were selling most of the ports, except for the ones that we made vintage port, but we were selling a lot in some in bulk, because in port it's harder to enter. I think we can claim to be pioneers all year in the red wine making, but in port you come to a market that is mature, so it's a harder situation. But we are very glad to little by little stop selling in bulk. And the specific port, we use a winery, especially we have 2 wineries within the property. One is totally devoted to port, so with Tunês, Balseiros, and Pipas, so all the types of casks that you use to age port. Specifically, this one we age in Balseiros, because this is a wine where you want to keep the oxidation away. I mean, you don't want the wine to have the oxidative part, so you want to keep the primary flavors of the grapes. My brother has spotted the specific vineyards he thinks are most suited for port, and then we do this wine in a way that's traditional. Here is totally traditional, because we use the granite lagares, the vessels to tread by foot. And the fermentation really takes place there, because these lagares, the port wine doesn't have the problem that red wine sometimes can have, which is the lagares giving too much of an extraction. In the case of port wines, that eventual super extraction will be compensated by the residual sugar of ports. So it's a wine that's really lively, fresh, and I think accompanies very well some desserts in the end of the meal, served fresh. And I hope you enjoy it. I don't know if you have questions. Let me put my glasses.
From jam, tobacco, delicious, perfect with blue cheese.
Right. Our queijo da serra also, our most known Portuguese cheese, goes very well as well.
Let me add something to the port. The very young ports have the perfect primary fruits that you can find in wine, because port only ferments only 1/3 of the initial sugar or potential alcohol is fermented. The rest is kept in the wine, and we add the brandy to stop the fermentation and raise the alcohol level and kill the yeasts. So in that first third of the fermentation, it's when the extraction of the primary fruits, dark plums, black cherries, blackberries, and all those fruits are concentrated in a much more intense way and more pure way than you have in a dry wine that ferments all through its sugar content. So young ports like these are very rich and very beautiful and incredible to taste.
Okay,
That's great. Yeah.
I'm not sure what is glue Porto, but if you have any idea, I was trying to check it out, but
It's delicious, easy drinking. Glue, glue, glue.
perhaps yes. And one of our Warsaw groups is tasting this wine with gorgonzola and tastes wonderful. Wow. Yeah.
Well done.
Well, glue. Thank you, Luisa. Thank you, Luisa. Well, the price, yes, the price.
Good question. This is about. Let me think.
You may come back later with the price.
15 euros.
15. Okay.
Yes.
Say what?
Okay. And how many bottles?
We produce about yearly about 10,000 bottles of wine.
10,000. Right. Good. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. There were also comments on the tour. That is fantastic. And well, now this is Dirk Nieport. Yeah, thank you, technical support. The number 12 is LBB and Dirk Nieport again. Hello.
Hello. So here we are touching a very sensitive subject, because 2017 is the year for me. I think the best wine I've ever made in my life was the vintage 17, and 17 was one of those years that actually I had a chat with David Guimarães just 2 days ago about it, and he read me the report from Yetman about 45, and there is really a lot of resemblance. And I had a tasting of 8 1945s in the last 2 days, and 45 is special. And what is remarkable about 45 is that it was a hot year, it was dry, it was difficult, the yields were very low, but during the harvest it was not so hot. And this is, I think, the key in 45, for the 45 and for the 17. And this late bottle vintage is very clear expression of a perfect LBV. It's just sexy. Again, we used the word already 15 times today. It's just a perfect wine. It's not a vintage port, but it has the character of a vintage, but it's a bit softer, a bit more mellow than the vintage. But it's a wine that is great young, but it will age forever and forever and forever, and it's very glue, but with some amazing backbone. So we have some comments. Yeah, glue is good. With gorgonzola, yes, of course, with cheese, perfect combination.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. I think comments are coming now, and but they are still in writing. Love this one. So this is
I love
all
you.
about your wine. Yeah, this is about your wine. Tea Porto. Yeah, Tea Porto.
Well, we are in the tea plantation here. This is where I am. And today was the first day of picking.
Oh yeah. And
So, cheers with some tea. First tea this year.
cheers.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you, Dirk. Somebody is writing, love this LBV. Herbish.
I like the description. Some people would probably think it's a negative thing, but I think herbish is a perfect description of what we do, which is make wines which have freshness, vibrancy, and not they are not based on plums and overripeness. They are based on freshness and delicacy and freshness.
How come that Nipor declares each year vintage port recently?
Well, we don't declare each year. We declared um, 11, 15, 9, and yeah, 15 and 17 and 19. So it's not every year. But the reason is probably because the conditions are so good and the wines are so good, but we will not declare 20. I think it has to do more with nature than anything else.
Okay, tannins are so noble, and with what are you fortifying port, and what does it mean for you?
Well, I'm not totally dramatic about the alcohol, but it's true that it's 20% of the port, so it has an importance. And since 15 years, we have been looking and getting better and better uh, brandies to fortify it, and so it is important, and we have been looking after it for a long time. But it's not Portuguese; it's mostly French, eventually Spanish, and we have been working on making it in Portugal, but the quality has not been as perfect as we have been hoping.
Okay, and with what are you fortifying the wine?
Well,
What-
it's a distilled wine. So the Port Wine Institute is very clear and very strict. It has to be distilled from wine and nothing else. And as I said, the spirits we have been using are from cognac, the best ones, and some from Spain and a little bit from Portugal. But it depends a little bit on the quality of what we get. People obviously then say, why don't you do it with your own wines? But the distillation is a culture as well, and it has to be. The Douro is too good to be for us to make wine to distill. That's the first thing. It's too hot for that. So most of the best distillations are from cool areas like cognac, and in Portugal we have some areas as well, but usually the quality is not as good as we have been hoping.
Okay, thank you. And your importer nowadays is Vininova.
Yep.
Vininova from Poznan. They are always also with us today, I believe. I hope so, because they are very silent today. Well, thank you, Dirk.
All right. Thank you very much.
And yeah, thank you. Thank you. Tannings are so noble. Yes, guys, we are passing to the last two wines. Thank you, Dirk. Thank you very much.
Say goodbye to you. Good night.
Good night. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. And this is Manuel. Manuel again, and wine number 13. Lucky 13. Manuel.
Hello again, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the port wines of Crasto. Very short introduction. So Quinta do Crasto, it's a famous estate for the port wines. We have a long legacy with port wine under the brand of Constantino de Almeida, so the ports of Constantino, with some very old. And recently, in the beginning of the 80s, Crasto started to bottle port wine under the brand of Quinta do Crasto. Okay, but this is an estate that is producing port wine since a long time. So nowadays we have the range of the rubies and the tawnies, and on the rubies we have the vintage ports and the LBVs, and also finest reserve ruby. And then on the tawny ports we've launched some colheitas, some tawnies colheitas. So that's where we are today. We are talking about the LBV port of the harvest 2011. 2011, it's a very interesting year, both for port wine and for dry wines. It's a very famous year for the international wine scores. For me, it's a very interesting year, of course, for port. We can get wines with very good concentration, very good fruit concentration. So the phenolics here on this year, they reach the level that it's very impressive, even both in color and in polyphenols. So the structure of these wines, it's very big. So these wines are quite powerful, and they have the right ingredients to age well. Regarding specifically the Quinta do Crasto LBV 2011, it's a wine that, first of all, it's sometimes I call it almost a small vintage, because it's unfiltered wine. It's bottled with a traditional cork, and so it's meant that it's a wine that can age in bottle and can be drunk. You can drink the early, or you can leave it, and the wine can age in bottle and have a very interesting aging potential in the bottle. So mainly what we do here is of course, the best moment of picking, it's always crucial here also in the port wine for us. We try to have a wine with a very with a fresh fruit, not with overripeness, not with overripe flavors. So we tend not to pass the fruitiness flavors that we have in the vineyard. So picking day, again, very important. And then all this wine, all these fruits is that comes from field blends from well, from old vines. So again, here mixed varieties. We pick it in 20 kilogram boxes, goes to the sorting table, then goes into the lagars, where we do the traditional food trading, and where we try to extract in the beginning of the fermentation as much as we can with the traditional way of the food trading. Nowadays we have also the help of a robo, because especially because with the situation of the COVID, where we couldn't have the teams doing the food trading, but the 2011 was made traditionally, and so no robo at the time. This wine particularly is unfiltered. After the fermentation goes into stainless steel tanks where it settles, and then we move immediately for the large oak vats of 9,000 liters, where it stays around 4 to 5 years, and then when we think it's the right moment, we bottle the wine. Um, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions regarding vinification or the some interesting things that you'd like to ask around the Krashtu still. Oh, how much? Yes, there is a sugar. There is the question about the level of sugar in the wine. Of course, it's a very interesting question. Port wine is made when we put the fruit in the lagars. We start food trading the fruits, and then the fermentation starts naturally, and we need to stop the fermentation. In the middle of the fermentation, we stop by adding the spirits, and spirit at 77 degrees of alcohol. Well, that moment defines if the wine has more sugar or less sugar. Depends on the style. Okay, here our LBV, it's always around 100 grams per liter of sugar. That's the level of sugar. Okay, but there are houses that have LBVs that are a little bit sweeter than other ones that have a little bit drier. So this has a 3.8 grams of Bourmet, and so it's around that level of sugar.
Okay, Manuel, thank you. I have a question about the silicon feet and human feet. What is better?
Well, nowadays we have both. We have a robo with a silicon. It's a long silicon feet, and the robo, it's very interesting because it's a technology that works with pressure. So it's like it tries to copy what a man does, because at the beginning when we do the food trading, it's very difficult to smash, to crush the fruit, and also because we produce the wines with stems. So it passes through the crusher. It's a slight crusher, but the stems are intact. So it's not easy to put our feet into the stems. So the first fruit trading is always the most difficult, and the robo tries to copy that. There are advantages and disadvantages. Of course, one of the advantage of doing the food trading with men, it's of course we can be very detailed with the robo, with the style of robo that we have here, and it's working pretty well. Sometimes it's not it's not so detailed as the traditional method. Also, the temperature of the human body, it's around our temperature. It's around 37 degrees, so it's which is nice, because if the fruit is too cold, we give a little bit of heat, and it's a natural starter for the natural fermentation to start. So it's good. But also there are some robots that we can set temperature, and they can do that as well. I'm not totally convinced about the robo against the traditional food trading, but with my experience, what it works better nowadays, the first food trading I always do with our team, and then I use the robo to punch down the cap when the fruit comes up, and then I punch down, and that works really beautifully. One big advantage of the robo, it's that sometimes complains less than the man, so than the team, and it can work without getting tired. So if we want if we need to intervene in the middle of the night, and we can set a robo and we can work the lagar. So that's a very good advantage. Another great advantage was during COVID. So we didn't have the problem of having 14 people inside of a lagar close to each other, and so the robo really helped us during those difficult times.
Good. Thank you, Manuel. I'm not asking about the price. Just tell me the number of bottles from 2011. How do you think?
But I know the price. I've informed myself before. So it's around 26 to 27 euros, around that.
Okay.
And the number of bottles,
and the production is?
And the number of bottles, it's always our LBV. It's around 30,000 bottles, around that.
30,000 bottles. Good. Thank you.
Okay. It's my last intervention. No, it's so.
This is your last. This is your last intervention,
okay,
right?
So,
thank you very much. Thank you very much,
everyone. It was a great pleasure being here with all of you, and I hope my explanations were clear. And I hope that all of you that are listening, that someday you can come to visit Krastu and the Douro, and to meet the Douro boys, because we are very. You always, when you come, you always have good fun. So we do a lot of parties, and also we work very professionally. Okay. So bye bye. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, Manuel, for your explanation. Yeah. Thank you for a great presentation. Great. And now for wine, and we started with João, and we are finishing with João, and yes, 20 years old.
We finish with the 20-year port. I'm not sure how the tradition is in Poland, but in Portugal we always leave the best for the end. Maybe someone
we do the same.
No, joking aside, we finish with the other family of ports. So far, all we've tasted are ruby ports, so wines that are aging in the bottle until you decide to open them. We finish now with the Tony port. So this is the family of the ports that are aged and therefore oxidated before they are bottled. So quick insight on the law, the Portuguese law. 20-year Tony port means this is a blend of different aged ports with an average age of 20. So it's like a whiskey in the sense that it is a blend, but 20 is the average, not the minimum age like it would be in a whiskey. Now, what this allows us to make, and what we like to do at Valado, is to blend very young and very old ports together. So we still get an average of around 20, but we get freshness, acidity, and fresh fruit from the younger ports, and then we will get the tertiary notes, which are so typical in old Tonys, from the barrels where the older ports aged, where you go more into the dry fruits, the walnuts, and the figs. Now, there is one particularity about these wines. They are aged in Régua, not at Porto. So we're very lucky that my great-grandmother, she had Don Antonio, one of the the particularities of her life, and Luisa mentioned there's quite a few, is that before we were allowed to age port wines in the Douro, Dona Antonia would always age wines in her estate in the Douro. So she said that two things. Number one, aging wines in your estate is like a piggy bank. They will always be better. They will always, and they will eventually be worth more. And crucially, laws change. So she would age wines in her estates, meaning we were very, very, very lucky when we inherited Quinta do Valado from after the sale of the family's porthouse. It came with big quantities of very old ports that, again, like I mentioned, are aged in the Douro. Now, the Douro is a little bit hotter in the summers and drier than Porto, meaning we get a slightly, I wouldn't say faster aging, but faster oxidation of the wines. And this is noticeable, particularly in the older ports. Now, back onto the 20-year-old port. The crucial part for us in blending young and old ports is to try and get, like I mentioned before, a balance between a fresh fruit start and a dry fruit finish. And the dry fruits at the end are absolutely crucial because these wines are aged in very big old wooden vats. They are more, they have more sugar than the previous wines. So this is around 140 grams per liter, which is quite a lot. But by blending in old ports in this lot or in this blend, you get a very long, dry finish. And this is absolutely key for us in making old ports, which is if you give them enough structure towards the end side, it disguises the alcohol, it disguises the sugar, and gives you a completely or almost completely dry finish, or a finish in terms of dry fruits. This is an excellent wine for desserts, but different desserts than the rubies we tried before, which are mainly with stronger cheese. Here, this goes very well with things like creme brulee, any sort of caramelized fruit desserts, or with old tonies by themselves, after coffee or with a cigar. I will mention one thing that I think has not yet been mentioned with the ports, which is drinking temperature. I think this is key. For me, all of the wines, all of the ports we have tried so far should always be consumed slightly chilled or even chilled. In my personal opinion, a 20-year-old port is perfect coming out of the fridge, but all of these wines will gain quite a bit if they are consumed a little bit below room temperature, and they harmonize much better with the cheeses or the different desserts. It's a 31.5 euro wine in Portugal, and in terms of quantity produced, really it depends on you guys. So because we keep old stocks or big stocks of old ports, this is a vintageless wine. We make it when we're selling out, we keep making more. Generally, we do about 10 to 15,000 bottles a year. But if you sommeliers really like it and really push it, then we can increase that. I think this is all on the wine. Maybe.
Yes, so.
To wrap it up.
You don't have vinho, but can I just say something? Why there isn't a port from Van Zellers? Because I'm very messy and the bottles didn't arrive on time.
Go on, please. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm sorry we were not able to send on time the bottles to Poland of our Tawny ports. But Van Zelsen company produces 60% of our sales are ports, and we hold stocks from in cask from 1860, 1870, 1888, and a few others along the line in the 20th century. And we produce 10, 20, 30, and 40-year-old Tonys, LBV vintage, and a collection of collectors. We will be launching this year a 19-year-old Tawny port, a blend of 19-year-old Tawny ports for the celebration of our 400th anniversary. In the business, which should have been 2 years ago, but due to COVID, we had to delay it. So you'll be seeing some of our old ports also in Poland one of these days.
Great. Well, I hope this is not the last tasting. Just let me read you some comments on Instagram. Damn good tasting. And we have some blue cheese and we are not afraid to use it. And comments here. Cantucci coffee, amazing, great. This no nuts aromas, awesome. Oh,
Awesome.
awesome. Yes. So great tasting. Thank you very much, guys. And
Thank you all. I think one last thing is if Piotr can share our contact details. Any questions or doubts, we're more than happy to answer. And ideally, if you come to the Douro, it's the best place to answer all the questions, particularly how to serve the wines and with what to eat them. Come and meet us, and we'll be more than happy to show you.
Yes, I will share. Yes, the price is 41 and 5. Yeah, the price is 41 and half euro. The price. Winem po Wiśle. Excellent. Still new comments coming. Intense oxidative style. Reminds a little bit of.
It is. So sherries they achieve the same or similar end result, but with open vats. So in sherry, they achieve this in a way, in the fastest way they can. Ports have the same thing, but in closed barrels. So we try to achieve the same thing, but in a very, very long time.
But the origin of sherry is Palomino and Pedro Jimenez, and the soil is Albariza, is clay, so it's very different soils and temperature. And some of the sherries are the way the adding the brandy is done is slightly different from what we do here in port. So you get much closer oxidative styles with the Amontillado, Palo Cortado, and old ports. You get some of those oxidation flavors, but normally you get the Amontillados and the Palo Cortados are mostly dry. So you don't get and it's slightly different. And the aging process, as João explained, is different also in terms of how the sherries are aged.
Well, thank you very much. It was, if not the best, it was certainly one of the best tastings we ever had here at Slow Guide. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe it was the best, But,
how do you say thank you in Polish?
well, we say dziękuję.
Dziękuję?
We say obrigado. We say obrigado.
I like dziękuję.
Okay, and thank you very much. It was a wonderful tasting, great wine journey. Many thanks. Now they are writing. Okay, many thanks. I think it was so good. It was so good that even the information that Brunello di Montalcino is coming back in September won't make any excitement here, but it's coming back, guys. And with another tasting. Yeah. Thank you for the meeting. Congratulations. Yeah. Well, great. We're still on air. Thank you all for attending, for being with us, and let's hope it's the beginning of Douro tastings here. Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Just so you go.